training, but that will be the subject of today's. If you have burning questions as I'm going along, you but I consider admissions to be everything from the day that student walks in the door and asks you about a school or asks you about a program to the day they get on the plane. That's what I consider admissions. Now, they decide if and where the student should apply, correct? They come in, they say, I want to study a bachelor's, I want to study chemical engineering. Because in this main system, there are 6 schools. Now, grad at all for Merrimack, and that's probably on its way. We recruit for post-grad at all of them except for James Madison and Vermont, and that's definitely on its way. We will be getting post-grad at least one of those for the next fall intake. All of them have some kind of English pathway except for LIU Brooklyn. So what does that mean? An English pathway is some way that a student with a lower level of English can get into the school directly. Now, that varies by program and by school. At undergrad, some of them will allow as low as 4.5 on the IELTS or even 45 on the TOEFL. Graduate, most of them are 5.5 on the IELTS, but one of them is 5.0. So that we are flexible on the English. The only one that is not is LIU Brooklyn. Now, some of them, you see, they have a dotted. What that means is it's a direct entry program, but they have their own ESL course, okay? It's not study groups course. All the ones with the solid checks have our pathway program at them. We can go over the structure of that in another training if you're not aware, but the pathway is the one that mixes academics and English, whereas the campus-run ESL programs like at LIU Post in the main system tend to just be straight ESL. It's just English. And then we have direct entry at all of the schools except for one, which are Merrimack. So we have pathway and direct entry at most of them. Now, a note about this. First of all, Merrimack, as you see, is post-grad only. Their pathway program, rather their master's degree, is only a year. So the pathway program and actually a one-semester pathway program really won't add time to that. So even though we don't have direct entry at Merrimack, it actually still is a very short duration master's. At University of Vermont and Widener, they will pay you commission for doing direct entry, but they do not simplify the process at all. So they, make the students apply at the normal deadline with the normal application, UVMS for SAT, but they still will give you a commission for that. The others actually will do direct entry through a greatly simplified process. So that means, no SAT, no application fee, much simpler documentation. So that's a look at everything we have to offer. This particular slide, and I will make sure you can get this presentation, is very, very detailed on the master's degree. I think I'm probably not going to go over this in great detail. I have this because I work a lot in India, and that market is almost entirely direct entry, rather entirely master's degree. However, what I will say is I know a lot of you are working in markets that are on the British education system. As you can see from column 3, most of our schools are perfectly fine with a 3-year bachelor degree, so British system. Most of them are okay with that. LIU, if your student wants to go there with a 3-year education, they need to get a WES evaluation, and they need to be a very good student, because if they're a very good student and they get a WES evaluation, that will give them a 4-year bachelor equivalency. So the only school of ours that really will not accept 3-year degrees is the University of Maine. Some of the schools ask for what's called an external credit evaluation. Most of you are probably familiar with WES. The only circumstance that we recommend you get WES is if you're a 3-year student applying to LIU. Other than that, for the schools that ask for this evaluation, we have a special agreement with some of the service providers that do that, and we can do it free of charge. And finally, the other thing I will point out is none of our pathway programs require the GRE or GMAT under any circumstances for the application. Now, direct entry is a different story. A lot of those will require the GRE or GMAT, and I'll show you where you can find that information later. LIU, you'll see a note that some of the programs do. That's because, recall, LIU is direct entry only. So LIU Post has the language program, the ESL, but it's still, that's run by LIU. It's not involved with study group. Study group just does the recruitment for them. Now, you know, when you're that'll tell you generally like what programs we have. Your student might also be interested in the start date, and this has it right here. So essentially, the easy way to remember is our pathways are available pretty much January, May, and August, September. Direct entry is usually only January or August, September. Royal Roads in particular, that's our Canadian partner, has intake dates throughout, you know, the whole year at different times. So you'd have to check the specific program that you want to see when the start date would be. Now, so the most important thing is where the student should apply based on their major, right? What schools have their major. Now the thing is, there is something called Course Finder, which I know that you're very active in using. I would not use that for the U.S. product just yet. It's, I think, very useful resource for the UK, for Australia, you know, study groups programs there. But for the U.S., well, they haven't really optimized it yet, so I wouldn't recommend you go there for now. Now, what I do want to show you are the other guides where you can find that sort of information. And if you don't have these, you can check with your partner sales manager. All right, so let me just show you the other guides. So we have something called the Quick Reference Guide. This is basically the guide to our pathways. Now, what does this have in it? Up front, it gives you some very basic information on the courses. I mean, rather the schools, where they are, what's the population, rankings, you know, key selling points, generally what kind of GPA you need to get in the American system. So that's the upfront part. The much more useful part is in the back. It has all of our pathway programs. This is International Year 1, so that's the undergraduate pathway. Every single major, every single school, what has it? We have the same thing for masters and for the accelerated degrees. You'll see we have a lot of these 5-year masters, we have some 6-year doctorates, so this just tells you every school and every major. The only thing I will caution is just 2 things. One is these are a little bit dated because we only publish once a year, and we're actually coming out with a combined guide, I think in the next couple of months, that you should be getting. So you should see this hopefully by like January, which will combine both direct entry and pathway, and it will have a lot more information in it, okay? But for now, this is what we have that you can use. Now, because this is a little bit dated, you see on this master's degree part, they have all these symbols, and that corresponds to GRE and GMAT requirements. For our pathways, GRE and GMATs are not required. That's because this is a bit outdated, all right? So remember, no GRE or GMAT for the pathway. I just need to make that absolutely clear. Now, the second thing we have is the direct entry guide. This is all the programs we have for direct entry. Now, up front, the information that this has is it tells you each school what is the very detailed process and requirements for applying direct entry. I told you for most of the schools, the process is pretty much the same as our pathway. There are some different requirements, though, and potentially one or two different steps in the application. So this guide just tells you in very detailed fashion what the process is for applying direct entry. Now, same thing in the back. You just have every school and major right here. Every school and every major. Now, the main thing for postgrad is where do you need to take the GRE or not, right? In our postgrad section, it just says it, right? Every subject, every school, and then it tells you if the GRE or GMAT is required. And there are some notes, so make sure to read the notes because there's different exceptions as well. So this just tells you right and very plainly if the GRE or GMAT is required for direct entry. So, that's step number one, right? You've seen when the student wants to go, you've seen which schools have start dates then, you've seen where has their major, right? Hold on just a second, I need a drink. So now, you don't want to launch an application that you know is not going to be successful, right? You want to have a reasonably good idea that the students can succeed. So we do have very clear local entry requirements for just about every country. So the main thing is you can check with your partner sales manager. The other good news is for most of the countries, most of the major markets, we will have a set that we can release to you. The reason we have not done that yet is we're still negotiating some of them. So also by very early next year, we should have a set of local entry requirements that you all can look at, and that will give you a very high degree of confidence of whether or not the student can come in or not. We already have them, again, internally, so if you want to check that, you can with your partner sales manager or whoever you interact with study group. They should be able to get you that answer, all right? Now, there's just a couple notes to this that I would note. First of all, for some like very alternative education pathways, like if you have a student who did the GED or did a few, maybe they did O levels and then switched to some other kind of track, those are a little bit harder to assess, so we don't have local entry criteria for every possible situation. The second thing is some majors, of course, can't be assessed immediately, like music or art. A lot of them have to have a portfolio, and we can't really prejudge that. We need the experts to do that. And then finally, graduate applications by their very nature are more, they're more difficult to assess, right? So those, have work requirements and resumes and letters of recommendation. We still have local entry criteria that will still give us a very high degree of confidence, but there is some lack of clarity on graduate. It's not as straightforward as undergrad. So already with what I've showed you, we're very far along. We've seen where the student, when he can go. We've seen which schools have the program, and we already have a good idea of whether or not he can get in. Now, a few other things. First of all, will the U.S. school allow a dual passport holder to apply, or in Royal Road's case, Canada? The answer for most of our schools is yes. LIU will not. I mean, your student can certainly apply, but they don't consider them as an international student, and they don't pay commission. University of Vermont, it's only Hong Kong and Korea. So for all of our other schools, it doesn't matter if your student is a U.S. passport holder or not. As long as they've been living abroad and educated abroad, they're considered as an international student. Will universities let them apply for a second master's degree? This isn't even so much a question about the university, it's more the U.S. government. So the basic rule on this is that the U.S. government will not really give you a visa for a degree that you already have, so they usually won't give you a visa for a second bachelor. Now for a master's, they won't give you a visa for the same master that you already have, but let's say you're going, you're a master's in engineering and you're going for an MBA, that's not a problem. And finally, will they consider a 3-year bachelor for admission to postgrad? We already went over to that question. The answer in almost every case is yes. The only exception to this that I would say is we even have some schools that will accept you for a master's if you did sort of like a 3-year polytechnic or other degree, so it's not even a bachelor, but it's like a 3-year polytechnic or professional degree. Widener will accept those students, and Merrimack will accept those students. So they don't even need a bachelor degree. Now, a major question you'll have is, should your student apply direct entry or not? This is, takes a little bit of a decision, and let me explain this. So the first thing is, many agents say, oh, you have a low GPA, so, you'll apply through the pathway, not direct. That's not true. So pathways and direct entry have the same academic criteria, the same kind of GPA requirements, depending on what country you're from. The main question is, what is their language ability, and how about some other tests? So let me explain this in more detail. So the pathway is mostly for English upgrading, as I mentioned. What else is it good for? What else does it provide? First of all, they provide personal support, advising. It's sort of an easier start to the university. We have some special social activities. So this is particularly good for students that haven't really studied abroad, they haven't lived abroad. It gives them a really nice supportive environment. Now, for postgrad, it also gives them GRE or GMAT prep, because as I showed you, GRE and GMAT is not needed for our pre-masters, but for most of the students it will be needed eventually, right? And so we'll prepare them for that, all right? We'll give them GRE or GMAT prep. The other thing is, it is an opportunity to start early. This is not for our training. I would have to give a separate training about this, but we've structured our undergrad such that most of the students, it will not add time and cost to their study. And we've structured the graduate that it's even possible to take that and to not add time to the study. It's not that likely, but it's possible. So let's say you're ready in like May, right? Most schools would not allow you to start or go to school in May. We have a May intake. So actually applying via the pathway may allow you to start early. So, there's a few different things to consider when you're thinking, like, should I apply for the pathway or not? So, sorry, let me show you some real examples. Just take a second to have a look at this. Okay. So on the left-hand side, there's an example of a student from China. She's a good student, right? But that, as I just mentioned, the pathways and the, direct entry have the same academic criteria, but so she is a good student. But her IELTS is too low for direct entry. She's never taken the SAT. She's never studied abroad. This is a student who needs the English. She doesn't have the SAT, which we waive for, our pathways, and she probably could use the personal support. So she should go via pathway. The second guy from Nigeria, he's a very strong student, has almost a perfect IELTS score, high SAT score, he studied abroad. He has no reason to go via pathway, and the school will ask a lot of questions if they see him applying for the pathway. Now, on the other end, you have this other student from India who, he's a strong applicant. His IELTS is borderline, so he can get in direct entry, but it's the lowest possible score. He's considering taking the SAT, but hasn't started, and he also has never studied abroad. So with him, he's actually able to go direct entry because most of our schools will waive the SAT even for that. But he has the minimum IELTS, so even though he can get in direct entry, it doesn't mean it will be easy. And he has never studied abroad, so he could probably benefit from the support of the pathway. And because he has a good IELTS score, the pathway would also not add time or cost to his study. So he's someone you'd have to talk about it with, and what are the benefits, what are the minuses, and figure it out. Now, the second group of students are for postgrad. Very similar to the first page. The first candidate, she's a good student, has work experience, but not high enough IELTS. She's never taken the GMAT, right? And she wants to go for MBA, so it would be required. For her, she should definitely go via the pathway. She'll get her English courses, she'll get her GRE or GMAT training, and by the way, because it's a study group pathway, she'll get academic credit as well. The middle student, no reason he should go for pre-masters. Great GRE score, high enough IELTS, strong student. Again, the right-hand student, this is one that we can talk about. Good candidate, minimum English to get into direct entry. She needs to take a GRE because she's in engineering and she hasn't done that, and she wants to start studying as soon as possible. So for her, again, you'd have to talk with her about it and figure out what what exactly she wants to do. But for her, she could go either way. Now, many of your students want scholarship. So the first point I will make is we do have some scholarships, and some of them are quite big, but the student needs to be able to fund the largest part or substantial part of their education by themselves. So we don't have full scholarships. That's not going to happen. We did have an occasion where UVM last year gave a couple of half scholarships. That was only for 1 year, and then after that it was $10,000 a year. So that's a very generous scholarship, but UVM is not cheap. Okay, it still costs plenty of money. So we have scholarships, but it's not going to pay for your whole student's education, right? There's a simple form that you have to fill out, okay? If you need the form, check with your partner sales manager. It's not an essay, it's nothing hard, it's just a form to fill out with the application. The only real criteria is it's on a first come, first served basis. So the earlier you apply, the more likely you are to get it. And what are the criteria? It's basically, we have these local entry criteria that I mentioned. If your student just meets the local entry criteria, they can get into the school, but they probably won't get the scholarship. They should have, very good grades. And what does very good mean? It means clearly higher than what the minimum entry criteria is. All right, so that is the part about the application decision. At this point, let me just pause for a moment and just see if you have any questions. Nothing at all? All right, if nothing, I will continue. Okay, so sorry. Now you're actually ready to apply, right? You've already picked the program, you've seen there's a scholarship, you know when you can go, everything. Now you need to know, like, how do you find the application, how do you complete the form, what do you include, all of that, right? So the first thing is our applications are on the partner website, which you should have access to. If not, you can just check with your partner manager. We have all the applications, so that should not be hard for you to come by, all right? How do you complete the application form? It's very simple. First of all of the applications, I believe, except for one of them, are ePDFs, meaning it's an electronic PDF that you can alter and save. And that's what we prefer you to do. Just type it in. That way you don't have to print and scan. There's no confusion about handwriting. Our system will automatically recognize the font and everything. So please, no need to print the form. In some countries, students have very long names, and they'll put like abbreviation for their middle name. Don't do that, please, because we base the I-20, etc. on the name on the application, and that should match what's on the passport. Please include all of the documents with the initial application, and you'll see what those are in a moment. And we don't consider them complete until everything is sent in. So I'll see emails from agents saying, we've sent this application 2 months ago and it's delayed. What's the matter? And when I go back and look, they did send the initial application 2 months ago, but they didn't send all the documents required until yesterday. So when that happens, that's when the clock starts. It starts when the application is complete. The only two exceptions to this are if we are giving you a conditional offer, if you need a credit evaluation, which is like for some of the grad programs you've seen is required. We don't need you to lodge the application, and we'll help you to get it, but everything else should be submitted. And for the password exam, which is our free English exam, again, I won't go into detail on that in this presentation. That's sort of another topic. But with the password exam, you don't need the full application. You just need the form. But otherwise, the application form should be full, okay, when you send it. And we don't review them until all the documents are complete. Now, where do you send the application to? So you send it to this email here, naaadmissions@studygroup.com, and there's, some instructions you should follow. Now, I'm telling you from the outset, you actually don't need to follow these. As long as you send it to that email address, someone will look at it, but it's in your interest to follow these, because the closer you follow, the quicker the review will be and the less chance of any human error based on, whatever mistakes a person can make. So this is how you should submit them. All applications go to naaadmissions@studygroup.com. Please, in the subject line, you write new application, URN number, whatever your URN number is, and then whatever university, Widener or Roosevelt. If you don't have your URN number, you can check with your partner manager or your sales, North America salesperson. Then, once you send the application, you'll get a reply. Like, they'll have follow-up questions, or they'll say it's complete, or they'll ask you to send some more things, missing documents. Once that happens, whatever email you have regarding that application, whenever you send something or you want to ask a query, how come it's late, you should just simply respond to that email, because that will have a case number and other information on it that will allow us to immediately identify who you're talking about. And then finally, one thing that you should probably do is CC either your partner manager or specialist, because then if you want to follow up, you say, hey, I emailed, admissions and they never got back to me. We will immediately have the history and be able to follow up with admissions. And the final thing I would say is note that in the subject line, you have to include the school name. What if you're applying to 2 or 3 schools? That often happens, right? I recommend you send 2 or 3 emails, a different one for each school. I know that's a little bit cumbersome, but why is that? Let's say you send an email with like 3 schools and you don't specify which one in the subject line. Someone will read that application. It will go to the back of the line, so automatically if it has the university name, it'll go to the right inbox. So someone will read that eventually. But then it's up to their own human judgment, and we know humans make mistakes. If you've attached 3 or 4 applications, they might overlook one, they might forget to send it to the right person. If you just send 1 email per application with the right school name, it will go to the right person, guaranteed. This is just a visual representation of that. Now we have deadlines. These obviously, oh no, excuse me, these are the latest ones. I did put them in. So you will have these from this presentation, and you can also always check with your partner sales manager. The point is, our earliest deadline is Roosevelt's post-grad one. The rest of them are due, late November, early December, so we have all these deadlines. Some of them are actually more updated than this. So once again, if you have any question about what the actual deadline is, you can check with your partner sales manager. We have them. But the point is they are very late. Now, you don't just submit an application, right? You have to submit documents with it. So what are those? We have this available in a lot of places. First thing, the application itself has a checklist. And you should use that, okay? You should use it, because that will show you what you're missing. The brochures themselves have a checklist in the back, and there is a quick reference 1-page document that I put together. So it has all the schools, all the undergraduate programs on 1 page, all the postgrad on another, and it just tells you every document you need and some of the details, like how much the bank statement needs to show, etc. What are the language requirements? Okay, this is a lot of print, so I'll just sort of interpret this for you. first thing is, two of our schools accept the Pearson, the PBT, I think it's called, yeah, the Pearson, yeah. That one is accepted by LIU, and it's accepted by Merrimack. Otherwise, all of the direct entry students need the IELTS or the TOEFL, okay? Now for our pathway programs, so the pre-master or the international year one, you may apply if you don't have the TOEFL or IELTS, or if you have a score that's too low to get in. How do you do that? There's an exam we have called the password exam. I'm not going to go into great detail because there's a whole, technical support and all of that relevant because it's an online test. But you can check with your product or partner sales manager. There is a free one online. You don't need to pre-register. You don't need to pay. You don't need any special equipment other than an internet hookup. There's no speaking or listening, okay? It has the same score banding as the IELTS, so it's out of, 5.5, 6, 6.5. The only thing you need to do is to take that exam is to submit the actual application form. Not all the documents, you just need to submit the form. Once you do that, you tell the admissions, like you send them the form, you say, I want to take the password, we'll give you instructions in the login. It's something you have to sort of download. The test takes 90 minutes. We can usually get it graded within a few days, all right? You can take it again after 2 weeks if you don't get a high enough score for entry. And it can replace a TOEFL or IELTS as long as that TOEFL or IELTS is 6 months or more old. So that's if you want a better TOEFL IELTS score. If your TOEFL IELTS is simply not high enough to get in, you can take it, the password exam regardless of when you took that TOEFL or IELTS. All right. You can take it anytime, anywhere. You don't need. There's no designated date or time. Now, as I mentioned, part of the pathway is English, right? There's English support. Now, there are students who, for many reasons, choose to do the pathway anyway, even though they have the level of English required for direct entry. Some of them just want the support. They're undergrads, they're young, their parents are protective, they want them to be taken care of. You might have grad students who need GRE or GMAT prep, or you might even have people who have what it takes to go direct entry, but maybe, let's say, they have the lowest English possible, and they really want some time or support to master their English. That's perfectly fine. There's just a form you have to sign. And the reason that the student has to sign it is because there are some agents who, because they think they can get more commission, they'll send the students through the pathway. And, that's not really right. If the student is qualified for direct entry, they should have that option. And this form just says, yes, I know I have that option, and I want to go through the pathway anyway. Just a second. So are there conditional offers? Now, I have to be very clear about what this means. In the British system, you'll get into a school, and your offer letter will say, because you apply, of course, before you graduate from high school, your offer letter will say, yes, congratulations, you're in, conditional upon you receiving this grade in your final, transcript. The U.S. doesn't say that because the U.S., it doesn't really do conditional offers. Every offer is understood to be conditional. So you apply to university in the U.S. typically when you're still in high school, and let's say they accept you, and you have to submit your final grades. And if you failed, like you failed your classes and you're not graduating, of course the university will then revoke your acceptance, okay? And for most schools, they're extremely reluctant to do that. So usually failing is the only way that they will revoke your acceptance. The only other way that I can imagine is if you did really badly, but you just passed. Let's say like the school would accept a B average or an 80, whatever grading system you're on, and then you get a D or like a 65, which is just passing. The school may revoke your offer, but it's very, very rare. So when I say that, that's not what I mean conditional offer. If you consider that to be conditional, then every offer from the U.S. is conditional. The point is they're very reluctant to, kick students out. So they'll only do, revoke the offer under very rare circumstances, but they don't want to list a specific grade because they don't want to encourage the students to underperform. So that's that's what a conditional offer is not. So what is a conditional offer? At some of our university partners like Maine, Widener, Royal Roads, they will give you a conditional offer if you have the key documents, which are pretty much like a passport and your transcripts for sure. You can apply without a language score, and they'll give you an offer for the longest possible language course, and then any time you could submit a TOEFL or IELTS, then they will give you the appropriate offer. Maybe you're missing a letter of recommendation if it does, if it requires that, like from any of the schools like Royal Roads, they can give you a conditional offer. You just need to submit whatever missing documents by the application deadline, and that should be fine. We also won't give you an I-20 if you just have a conditional offer but you never got the full offer. The only exception I would say to this, we have these 3 schools. LIU Post, remember, that's direct entry only. At the undergraduate level only, they will allow a student to go who has no English test, and they'll assess them on campus. All right. So that's LIU's kind of conditional offer. They'll take a student without an English score. All right, so what's different about graduate applications? First of all, this is implicit already. So typically, we have these application checklists. They have postgrad and undergrad. The brochure does as well. So you should already be able to deduce this. But in general, what is different? So postgrad applications are more complicated, all right? They'll usually require a letter of recommendation, at least 2. They'll usually ask for a resume or CV, and they have to be reviewed by the faculty, so the review takes longer. Our undergrad, once you send a complete application, which I can't emphasize enough, must be complete, that takes a week to review. Postgrad will take 3 weeks, okay? And in some cases, the deadlines are a little bit earlier because it takes longer for them to review, but still very late deadlines. Remember, our earliest one for the spring this year, the January intake, is November 15th. These guides show you the requirements for postgrad and direct entry, undergrad. You can look at those 2 pathway and direct entry guides plus the checklist. Now, we do have credit evaluations required for some of the programs. Remember, LIU doesn't require it for all students, only those with 3-year degrees, and if your student is in that case, then they should get a WES evaluation, all right, if they're a strong student. Otherwise, Roosevelt and Widener require the credit evaluation. This is how you go about doing that. So you submit the application, it's not complete because you don't have the evaluation. The admissions manager will say, do you want our help you need a credit evaluation, do you want our help? You'll say yes, okay. Then she will send you a copy of the documents needed. This varies very much by country. So it's country specific. She will send you the sheet which has the right documents on it. Now, that has an address on it that you have to send those documents to, and as soon as you send the documents, you should let her know what the tracking information is, because if you just send the documents and don't tell anyone, they may just sit there and no one will look at them, okay? Our pathway credit evaluation, so that should be free for most cases, not every case, but it's usually free. We do this for direct entry students as well. So if you're applying direct entry via study group, we'll get you the evaluation. Now, it's chargeable though. It's $150 in most cases, but that's still much cheaper than WES, and it's faster. It should only take 5 to 7 business days, whereas WES can take 3 weeks, I hear. What about direct applications? I think I've already gone over that pretty much. So direct applications for most of the schools except for UVM or Widener are pretty much the same as the pathway application. Look at the guide because it may include a couple steps. The deadlines are often a little bit earlier. The password exam is not accepted. Remember, you need the TOEFL or IELTS, and in some cases, the Pearson will be accepted. And GRE or GMAT is generally required. Now, you have to look at the guide. It's not required for every direct entry, but for the popular ones, mainly the MBA, the hard sciences, engineering, those almost all would require GRE, GMAT. All right, moving along. Check the direct entry guide if you have any questions about direct entry. And that's it. Okay, so we've decided where the student was applied. We took the application, we applied, we sent all the relevant documents, and now there is only to wait, right? So that's what we've done. Let me pause now to see if there are any questions. Just type them in if you have them. Okay, I see there's a few, so let me take a moment to answer these. Oops, how do I maximize these? So you can hear me. Great. Okay, so for the quick reference guides, we can email that to you. Just contact your partner sales manager because they'll have your email. Remember, the ones that we have are going to be obsolete fairly soon, so we're going to have a much better and consolidated guide. For the entry requirements, we don't have ones that we can release to you publicly just yet, but that should be coming in a couple months. For now, if you have any questions like, can the student go, check with your partner sales manager. Okay, so you're asking what does that mean, 3 years with a WES evaluation? So a WES evaluation is a type of an external credit evaluation. We generally don't recommend that one. We recommend the free ones that our admissions manager can arrange for you. However, there is 2 partner schools we work with, Long Island University Post and Long Island University Brooklyn. They, technically speaking, do not allow students with a 3-year bachelor degree, which is basically, that's the UK system, right? Whereas all of our other schools except one will accept that. So, but you have a 3-year bachelor degree student, they really want to go to LIU. If they're a strong student, so if they're like first class or first division, they should get an evaluation. And if they get an evaluation, because they have to if they're a 3-year student applying to LIU, they should get a WES evaluation, because if they're a good student, WES will award them a 4-year bachelor equivalency. So if you have a master's degree student, so they've done their undergrad at a 3-year institution, they now want to do postgrad at LIU only, they should get a WES evaluation. If you have further questions about that, you can check with your partner manager and we can go over that in more detail. The training notes, so you're basically talking about this, this presentation. I will share that with all the partner sales managers and you can contact them. By the way, I will also give you my email address at the end of this presentation, and if you're not getting the answer you need, or you do want to check something with me in particular, you can also email me. That's fine. Okay, so you're asking me about Indian students. I work mostly in India, so I'm very familiar with that. With a 2.5 GPA, that will be too low for most of the engineering, but actually for Merrimack a 2.5 is okay. So they have a 4-year bachelor's, 2.3 they'll accept, a 3-year bachelor they'll accept up to as low as a 2.5. The key thing will be the backlogs. So for Indian students, we have different amounts of backlogs that we'll accept. The point is, for engineering, it won't be that many. I do meet students, they have 20 and 30 backlogs. That we won't accept for any school. For engineering, they'll accept a few backlogs, but those backlogs will mean that the minimum GPA is, requirement is higher. So let me just give you an idea. So let's say you have a student with a 2.5 GPA. They may be able to get into Merrimack if they have a couple of backlogs, but those backlogs, of course, shouldn't be in their key course that they want to study. Like if it's in calculus, that's okay, but if it's in mechanical engineering and they want to study mechanical engineering, that's not a good idea, okay? If you have any more questions specifically about India, you can email me because I'm the resident expert about that. So the password exam I think you were asking about, that can only be taken for pathway programs, not for direct entry. Is it, for the credit evaluation, is it original documents or is it certified by the agent? That depends on each country. That's why it's important to look at the sheet of instructions that the admissions manager gives you. So that's different by country. Pathway, none of the programs request GRE or GMAT. It's only direct entry. The programs that require the GRE or GMAT will be in the guide, okay? 6.5 IELTS is good enough for most of the direct entry. The only one that it's not is Widener at the post-grad level requires a 7.0, and some very specific programs that are very English heavy, like journalism or English literature, might require higher than a 6.5. That's for postgrad. For a 3-year UK degree, now I've given you that list, or I will, in this presentation. That has nothing to do with the pathway or not. So if the school accepts 3-year degrees, it accepts 3-year degrees. It doesn't matter if it's pathway or direct entry. The only school that does not is University of Maine. All the others accept 3-year degrees. So can they go in direct or not? That will depend on the English score, and it will depend on the GRE or GMAT. They will not be disadvantaged if they have a 3-year degree. The password exam is admissible at all universities for the pathway. Remember, like LIU doesn't have a pathway, it's direct entry only, so that's no password exam. And all of our pathways will accept it. Is it scheduled? No, it's not scheduled. You can take it whenever you want as long as you have, have it set up. The Pearson is accepted by Merrimack and LIU, so that's what accepts the Pearson. I will make sure that you all get the presentation. So what I will do is I will pass it to all of the partner sales managers, and you can check with your partner sales manager for the presentation. All right, so those are all the questions till now. 1 second, I see there's one more. Okay, so I am going to go over that. Okay, so since you asked, that normally is something I go over in the other presentations, but I will quickly review that today. But let me just get back to the topic that I want to talk about now. So now, you've applied already. So what do you do, right? What do you do? How long is it going to take? What's going on? So the first thing, you have questions, right? So you've submitted the offer, or the application, or you're in the process. Here's like who you contact. So the first thing is, to send that new application, or you want to get an update, you always use that NAA admissions, right? And especially if they've already emailed you about something, you should always just reply to that email. Don't send them a fresh, don't send them a fresh email, okay? The second thing is, once you get an email, you just reply. That could come from the specific school email, like Widener Admissions. So most of your email will go to NAA Admissions. All of the new email will go there. Sometimes you might get an email back from Widener Admissions or LIU Admissions or JMU Admissions. Then you reply to that. If you have a query, you can reply to naaqueries@studygroup.com. But I actually, like unless it's a really general question that you don't really need an answer to very, very quickly, then you really should reach out to your partner sales manager or your North America product specialist, because pretty much anything you need to ask, we would know the answer to. So I direct most of your questions there, to me, to your product specialist, to the partner sales manager. For anything financial related, these are the emails. You can CC, your partner sales manager on it, but we don't have any involvement with commission payments, right, or anything like that. We can help you, like if if you've attached us on it, you've sent that to finance and haven't heard an answer, we can escalate that, but we can't, we have nothing to do with finance, okay? Now let me just see. So as I said, yes, today we did dwell mostly on the admissions process. I'm very happy to offer another training for like more detailed information about the schools, right? More, not just the application process. Just check with your partner sales manager and we can arrange a second call. Are they accepted by the Saudi Arabian Cultural Mission? To be honest, I do not know the answer to that. I know that they used to be, because we did have Saudi Arabian sponsored students, who did go through our pathway, but those regulations do change. So the best person to ask, of course, would be the Saudi Arabian Mission. If not, and you don't know the answer, just email the partner sales manager and we can try to get that information for you. But in the past, they did accept those. However, I know some of the regulations have changed. So I know, for example, one of the schools, Royal Roads, they used to accept it and now they don't. So those regulations do change. Now, what's the turnaround time? And this is very critical, okay? Remember, turnaround times are only based on completed applications. So I very frequently get emails saying the application is late, we need a decision, and literally the application hasn't even been completed. So this is completed applications only. Let me make it simple for you. The undergrad pathway, the turnaround time should be 5 business days. Of course, if there's questions and back and forth and something's not clear, that will lengthen the time. But if you just send us a completed application, you get the acknowledgement that it's complete, it should take 5 business days. For direct entry, it should also be 5 business days. To be honest with you, I'd let it slide a little bit longer than that because those do have to go to the university. So, maybe allow another day or 2 onto that, but it should only be 5 business days. Graduate post-grad, PM, pre-masters or direct should only be about 3 weeks. Remember, for the direct entry as opposed to the pre-masters, you may allow a couple extra days onto that because that has to go to the university directly. So, quick answer, undergrad 5 business days, post-grad 3 weeks, allow a day or 2 grace for the, extra for the direct entry. Now, there are 3 exceptions to that, okay? One is LIU, they just take longer. Okay, so for undergrad they take 2 to 4 weeks. For postgrad they take 4 to 6 weeks. It varies very much by what major your student is applying for. Royal Roads is also an outlier now. As of now, their postgrad applications are taking very, very long time to process, 6 to 8 weeks. The good news is those times should be going down because study group is taking a more active role in the admissions process, but bear in mind that the post-grad applications will take quite a long time at this hour, at this time. And also bear in mind that the Canadian study permit takes much longer in most cases than the U.S. Visa. So the point is, for Royal Roads, you'll need to give yourself a little bit of extra time. Now, the final thing that I will talk about with these turnaround times is you do bear a little bit of responsibility here. So what do I mean by that? So, we commit to these turnaround times. When we start missing them, you should let us know. So if you've applied Monday, it's now the following Monday, and you applied to Roosevelt, undergrad ISC, you should have that offer. And if you don't, you should follow up with NAA admissions with your partner sales manager CC'd. Okay, you follow up to NAA admissions. You reply to the email that they sent you, when we said the offer was complete, and then you say, hey, what's up with this, this is delayed. I do not want to see emails that said, this student applied 4 months ago and we haven't heard back. Why did you wait 4 months to check, right? If it's 4 months, that probably means the university somehow lost the application and it's probably too late for everyone, right? So you need to be vigilant about this. As soon as we miss the turnaround time, that's when you should start bothering us, and you should start bothering NAA admissions with your partner sales manager attached. Remember, that's for completed applications only, not incomplete applications. So I hope I've made myself clear about this. We aim to give you the best service possible. Do let us know as soon as we're late. Do not hesitate, okay? I'm going to talk about on-campus in just a minute, okay, or rather the accommodation. That isn't the point of this training, but I will get to it in a second. Now, we do have something called an exceptional case forum. Exceptional case form. There's two ways that you can use this. We do allow your student to defer by one intake. So let's say they've applied to the January intake and they want to defer one intake to May, or sometimes the May not be available to the fall. That's fine. You just have to fill out the form and let us know why. Okay. So that's how you defer. The second way you can use this is, let's say you send us a profile and you know already, because we told you, that it misses the entry criteria, but you have a reasonable excuse for that. Let's say they just missed the entry requirements because they got really bad grades one semester, and that's the semester that they moved schools, or they were sick, they had a medical problem, or their mother passed away. Those are very legitimate excuses, and I have seen students get in using this form, with very legitimate excuses. You just fill in the form and you submit this with the application. Don't wait for the student to get rejected and then to fill it out, okay? It's best if you do this, while you're applying, and that way you can get in. You have a chance. It's not guaranteed if the student misses the entry criteria for a reasonable explanation. So the student confirms. Now what? I'm actually not going to go over this in great detail because you get these instructions when the student gets accepted. But basically, there's some forms. So first thing is you're going to get a confirmation that the student was accepted. You should read that carefully, okay? It's not pretty things to put on your coffee table. You should read them carefully. There'll be a couple forms you have to fill out, like an acceptance, an acknowledgement of academic documents, etc. There'll be 2 or 3 forms. You need to fill them out, okay? Then you need to pay the deposit. This is slightly different by program and country. It should be, most circumstances, $2,000, some $3,000, sometimes more. You have to pay that deposit. There's a pay online system that you have to go through, even if you're paying by bank draft, because we do allow you to pay by bank transfer, but you just have to let us know that through the pay online system. So you submit the documents, you submit the proof of payment, and then then we send you the I-20. It should only take a few days. If you're sort of a late application, let us know if you want the SEVIS number. That's the number you use to book the appointment at the U.S. Embassy, and we can send that to you first without, the physical copy of the I-20 in hand, just so you can make the appointment. And just same thing with the I-20 as with the application. Should only take 3, maybe 5 business days. If it takes longer than that, you should be chasing us. And just don't email me saying like, oh, we've been waiting 3 months for that. Like, that means someone forgot about it, right? Or there was a mistake. So be vigilant on this. And we will refund your deposit as long as the student as long as the student was rejected for a visa. If your student applies, gets the I-20, and then decides, oops, never mind, I want to go to a different school, we're not going to refund the money. Okay, so we're not looking to just provide I-20s and visas. They have to want to go to our school, and we will refund the deposit if the visa is rejected. Why are bank statements required? So that is required by the U.S. government. It's not study group. Some of the schools will ask you to send that with the application. Some will just ask you to send it when you confirm. That bank statement should show you be showing the full amount of funds needed to pay for a full year of school, tuition, and housing and living expenses. Some of the schools will tell you what that amount should be. Others, it's in the brochure. If you have any doubts, ask your the admissions manager. So that's required definitely for the I-20. Some of the schools will require it with the application, simply to expedite the I-20 process, and just to make sure that the student can actually pay, because they don't want to be processing lots of applications for students who can't afford the school. Of course, it's not expected that the student pay, right? Like if it's his parents or some sponsoring organization or some relative or friend, we just need a notarized letter saying that, okay, that it's, Mary's bank account, not Sally's, and this is the letter saying that Mary is the one paying, okay? Finally, you'll get a welcome package, once you've confirmed. Each of the schools have a different one. The point is just that I made before, this is not coffee table decoration. Like, you should read this and you should comply with it. Each school has slightly different requirements. They tell you what to bring. They tell you any sort of placement exams or anything else you need to do. If you don't follow these, your student's education will be jeopardized. Their start date may be in danger. They might not be allowed to join the class. So just read these, take them seriously. That's all I'll say about it now. And finally, do we have airport pickup options? Some of the schools, yes. Some of the schools, no. Usually the schools where we don't have an option, it's because the airport is like 5 or 10 minutes away from the school, so there's no need to, arrange that. You can very easily take a taxi. But most of our schools, we have some kind of airport pickup option. This will be communicated to you by the admissions manager. So they will say, do you need an airport pickup? And they'll tell you the instructions. Now, I will answer the last question about housing now, even though that's not really the focus of this. And any other questions, just type them in, and I'll try to get to them. If we don't get them to them now, ask your partner sales manager, and they can send them to me, and I will make sure that they go answered. So, is housing available? What's the deal with housing? So I'll just use this to go over it. So, all of our undergraduate programs, housing is guaranteed. The only school that does not have any housing for anyone is Royal Roads. So as of now, Royal Roads for both undergrad and postgrad has no housing. They have a homestay program, which we highly recommend because many undergrads are minors. They can't even live by themselves. And even for postgrads, you're getting off, even you're 30 years old, you're getting off of the plane. Are you going to want to look for a house right away? So Royal Roads is homestay. All the other undergraduate programs, they guarantee housing. At James Madison, we don't necessarily have enough dorms for everyone, but we do actually have our own condominium that we arrange, which many students actually prefer versus the dorm because it's cheaper than the dorm and, of course, nicer because it's a condominium. So you have your own in-house bathroom and gym and swimming pool. Otherwise, all of our undergrad grant housing. The graduate schools also have housing, but you generally have to let them know earlier just because it's limited availability. Usually if the student wants the housing, they'll get it, but you do have to let us know and try to do that earlier rather than later. Widener doesn't have graduate campus housing, but there is off-campus housing we can help you arrange. So it's private housing, but we help you arrange it. So just to review, Royal Roads, no housing. Undergrad, usually housing, just let us know. Postgrad, some of them, they all have housing, but it's limited availability, so the earlier you let us know, the better. The only one that doesn't have grad housing is Widener, and that we help you to arrange. So that is the end of the presentation. I will make sure all the partner sales managers get this. I will just look one last time about the question. So the student has to pay the SEVIS fee before the I-20. That's necessary for us to issue the I-20. The key thing is, though, that I want to make clear is it's not a fee. It's not a fee. It's part of the tuition, okay? So it doesn't add any cost. And if you get it rejected, we return it. So it's not an extra fee, okay? So my email ID, I will type here in large print so you can see it. That's my to-do list. So my email ID is jasoncohen@studygroup.com. All right, so that's my email ID if you need to get to it. So is there an interview for the visas? Okay, we at Study Group do not do that because it's actually a legal issue. We are, there are authorized, visa services, and we're not one of them. So, you know, like it's just, we don't generally do that. There's some general advice we might be able to give you, but that is a service that in many markets the agents usually are very knowledgeable about. So we don't give official mock interviews. How big is the U.S. pathway market compared to the U.K.? The U.S. pathway market is tiny. There's only maybe 15 or 20 schools in the whole United States that offer pathways, so study group has most of them. Whereas in the UK, it's a very standard practice. So this route that we're giving you, where you can get into school with lower English, with no GRE, GMAT, with no SAT, this is a very special opportunity for you and the students. So it's a very, very small market in the US for pathway, very big in Australia and the UK. It's growing, though, in the US, so we're adding more choices every year. The Maine system includes 7 public universities in Maine, the best one being the University of Maine. If you want more information about those, send me or whoever an email, your partner sales manager, and I can provide you. None of those are very big, famous schools. They're not very highly ranked, but what do they have going for them? They're high-quality, fully accredited institutions. They're undergraduate. They don't require the SAT, and they're very, very affordable. So you can study nursing, you can study aviation, you can study architecture, and the tuition fees for some of them are $10,000 a year. So they're very, very affordable, and some of them are very accessible. Some of them are almost like a community college. The only real entry criteria is that you've graduated high school. What scholarships are available for students at the undergraduate level? So that I didn't post because it changes every intake. This current intake we have at most of the schools $2,500 scholarships available. The big exception to that is University of Vermont. They have scholarships that are $10,000 per year, so that's a $40,000 scholarship. For the fall intake, I think the scholarship amounts will be more. It'll probably be $5,000, although I'm not sure of that yet. And University of Vermont will continue to offer that $10,000 per year scholarship. They also offered some half scholarships as well, but that was only a couple of them. Post-grad, we only have scholarships, small scholarships at Long Island University, at Merrimack, and at Royal Roads. But for those, you have to check your emails for the updated ones because it's different every intake. Difference between LIU Post and Brooklyn. LIU Brooklyn is in the city center. LIU Post is in just outside of the city center. They offer different majors. The main differences being the health professions like pharmaceuticals are mostly at Brooklyn. Post has a couple of them, but not much. LIU Brooklyn has computer science. LIU Post has information systems. LIU Post is generally a little bit more difficult to get in than LIU Brooklyn, but LIU Post has a language program, so you can get in with a lower level of English, whereas LIU Brooklyn does not. Okay, so those are the differences. Roosevelt University, so this I won't go into right now because each school has very different requirements. For Roosevelt University, they actually don't require A-levels, so most of our schools do not. Most of our schools, O-levels are fine. None of our schools require A-level at all. In fact, there's something called AS level, which is like the first year of A-level. If you have an AS level certificate, that's good enough for all of our schools. So none of them require A-level strictly. And for Roosevelt in particular, they're one of our easiest ones to get into. So the grades that would be required are pretty much just passing grades. But I won't go into the schools more difficult in more detail right now. And yes, it's possible to have a training on each university. So that seems to be sort of a popular demand. I will check that the team can arrange that, and I will run that. In that way, I will go over each university in 5 or 10 minutes, okay? And just remember, you will have those local entry criteria sometime next year. All right. In the meantime, you can check with your partner sales manager, and they will be able to help you out in terms of evaluating a transcript. If you should bother applying. So I just see one final question. Yes. So as I said, most of our schools accept O-level students. The only ones that would require AS level are LIU, Royal Roads, and University of Vermont. All the other schools will accept O-level. All right, we've gone a little bit over time, so I will cease the presentation now. I really hope that this has been helpful for you, and feel free to reach out to us at any time. We will have more people available to help you in the future, but for right now, you know who the team is, so we're very happy to help you, and I'm thrilled to see such a high turnout, 100 of you. Very, very good. So nice talking to you, and good